Hi everyone, my name is Caris and welcome back to my corner of the internet where I talk about books and other things that I enjoy. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing a really exciting TBR with you all. So one of my lifetime goals is to read one book from every single country of the world, and I've been thinking about this a lot recently and thinking if I want to do this, then I really need to start prioritizing it. So that is exactly what I've decided that I'm going to be doing at the end of this year and then moving into next year. I'm going to be really trying to make a conscious effort to read more books that are written by authors from different countries and set in those countries as well. So I've been thinking a lot about ways that I can go about this, and I thought one fun way to do it would be to put the countries into different categories. So for example, this set of books that I'm going to be talking about today are books that are from all the countries that I was meant to be traveling to in 2020 before this whole pandemic happened. But other categories that I've thought of are maybe books from the countries that I want to visit the most, books from countries I have already visited, maybe books from countries that I've edited guidebooks for because I edit travel guides for a living, and I've edited guidebooks to countries such as Gabon, Uzbekistan, Benin, loads of different places. Maybe just like throwing a dart at a map and seeing what countries the darts land on. All sorts of different things. So that's the plan going forward, but as I said, the first group of books that I thought I would start out by reading is books from countries that I was meant to travel to in 2020. Travel is such a huge part of my life. As I said, I edit travel guides for a living. I spend approximately 90% of my time thinking about travel, and I am in a hugely privileged position to be able to travel to the extent that I do and go to the countries that I do go to, and I'm really grateful for that. Obviously, because I spend so much of my life doing travel related things, I have really missed traveling in 2020. But obviously the most important thing this year, far more important than traveling, has been just making sure that everyone keeps safe and well and we just get through this horrible time. But that being said, this idea came to me that I would start out my little reading around the world adventure by reading the books from the countries that I was meant to be going to this year, to give myself a bit of virtual travel through books. So I've got 4 books that I'm going to be talking about today because I had 4 trips planned when everything got cancelled. And then in terms of reading these books, I'm going to be doing some reading vlogs. I asked on Twitter how people would prefer me to do them, if they prefer 1 long vlog or 4 shorter vlogs, and the 4 shorter vlogs option won. So I think that's how I'm going to do it, and that way it means that I can put a lot more into the videos. Like, I can talk about where I would love to travel to within each country. I can do things like trying to bake a national dish or trying to cook a traditional meal, all sorts of things like that I would really love to do. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And if for any of these countries that I mentioned, like, you're familiar with and you have any ideas for things that I can like bake or cook, or things that I should just look at or listen to do with that country, then please feel free to let me know in the comments. So on to the actual TBR. The first country that I was meant to travel to this year was Slovakia. I was meant to be having a sort of long weekend in Bratislava in March. I was actually meant to be going there like the weekend that was our first weekend in lockdown in the end, so it was a bit of a difference for me there. But I wanted to go to Bratislava because my company has a city guide to there, and I actually edited it earlier this year and at the end of last year as well, and it just sounded really intriguing to me. I really wanted to go there. I wanted to see the castle and the river and the UFO tower. So the book that I've chosen for this is called The Equestrian, and it's by Ursula Kovalik. So of the 4 books that I've got on this TBR, this was actually the one that I struggled to find the most. I struggled quite a bit with finding a Slovak book that had been translated into English that I could also access for a fairly reasonable price. I'm not sure why. I found like loads of books from the countries surrounding it, like Czech Republic. There was loads of Czech books that I could find, but hardly any Slovakian ones. This book is actually set in the 1980s, so in the setting, Slovakia isn't its own country at that point, it's still Czechoslovakia. But the author of this book is Slovakian, and it was written in Slovak originally, and the setting is described as the east of Czechoslovakia, which I am assuming translates to the modern day Slovakia, because like that's where it is on the map. So the blurb for this one says, it is 1984 in a small town in the east of the Czechoslovak Socialist Republic. Karolina is growing up. It is not easy. Her mother has too many boyfriends and her grandmother carries a knife. In an attempt to escape, she joins a riding school on the edge of town. There she befriends Romana, a girl with one leg shorter than the other, and Matilda, a rider and trainer who helps the two girls overcome their physical limitations. Together they form a successful trick riding team. Soon the town doesn't seem so small anymore as Karolina explores Pink Floyd and smoking and discovers her knack for seeing deep into others' souls. So this just sounds like a really interesting coming of age story with a family twist. I'm not sure what the bit about seeing into other people's souls means, if there's going to be like a magical realism element or not, but it just sounds really intriguing. It hasn't arrived yet, but I know that it's quite a short book, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to get through it quite quickly, which is good because one book in particular on this TBR is absolutely massive. So the second country that I was meant to be traveling to this year was Spain. I was meant to be going to Madrid with two of my friends. I've never actually been to Spain before, which I really wanted to change because I've been to so much of the rest of Europe but just never to Spain yet. We were going to go in May, so the weather was going to be nice hopefully, and we were just going to do a lot of mooching around, eating and drinking, which is the perfect sort of thing that I love to do on a city break. So for Spain there were quite a few books that I could have gone for, but in the end I decided to go with The Shadow of the Wind by Carlo Ruiz Zafón. This is one that's been on my TBR for absolutely ages, so that's why I decided to bite the bullet and go for it. I really think that I'm going to love this book and I've heard so many wonderful things about it. So this isn't actually set in Madrid, it's set in Barcelona, but I didn't set myself like the limitation of reading from the specific city that I was going to be visiting because I thought that would be too difficult in a lot of cases. So this focuses on a place called the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, which is a labyrinthine library of obscure and forgotten titles, and it follows a man who takes his son here, and his son picks out a book, and then I think a lot of other people become intrigued by the author of this book. And the blurb says, what begins as a case of literary curiosity turns into a race to find out the truth behind the life and death of Julian Carax, who is the author of this book that the boy chose, and to save those he left behind. Again, that just sounds so fascinating to me. All the other books that I've ever read that feature books as one of the main plot devices and one of the key elements, I've always really loved, and I just find them so magical. So I'm really hoping that that's replicated in this as well. The third country that I was planning to visit in 2020 was Norway. Norway is the only country on this list that I've actually been to before. I've been there twice. Both times that I've been there, I've either stayed with or met up with my friend Louise. I actually met Louise through BookTube. She started a BookTube channel on the same day that I did back in 2014, and we were like each other's first subscribers, or one of each other's first subscribers, and just got talking, and then we just became friends from there. The first time I went to Oslo, I was there when I was interrailing, and I met up with her, and then either the year or 2 years later I actually went back and stayed with her and just had such an amazing time. I actually have a vlog from that trip which I think is still live on my channel, so I will link it in the description and put it in the cards if it is. And we just had such a lovely time, and it's been so long since I saw her, and I was so excited to be going back there this summer to see her again. And we were gonna go to a festival in Oslo to see Taylor Swift because we both love Taylor Swift, and it was just going to be so good, and I'm just so upset that that didn't happen, but hopefully I will be going again, and if Taylor Swift's not there Louise will still be there, so it will be great either way. So I actually asked Louise if she had any recommendations for books that I should read for Norway, because obviously she's Norwegian, so she picked this one out for me, and I'm really glad that she did. It sounds really good, and it's also pretty short, which is a good thing when I get around to showing you the last book. So this is The Orange Girl by Jostein Gaarder. I really hope that I pronounced that right because Louise told me how to pronounce it. So this is apparently by the author who wrote Sophie's World, which I haven't read, but it's a book that I've heard a lot about before. But this one is about a boy whose father has died, and then some letters and stories that his father has written are discovered, and one of them is a story called The Orange Girl. And we sort of learn that this is no ordinary story. It talks about how one day his father saw this girl, I think it says on a train platform. Yeah, one day he boarded a tram and was captivated by a beautiful girl standing in the aisles clutching a huge paper bag of luscious looking oranges. Suddenly the tram gave a jolt and he stumbled forward, sending the oranges flying in all directions. I think this man's son then goes on this journey to find the orange girl, find out who she is, discover her real identity, and I guess by doing so he might learn a bit more about his father and his family as well. I don't know too much other than that, but Louise said that it's one of her all-time favourite books, and I believe it's set in Oslo, so yeah, super excited to be getting round to this one. I think this might be the first one that I read, but I'm not entirely sure. And the final country that I was meant to be going to this year was Georgia. I was booked onto a trip with a tour company called Top Deck Travel, which is a company for like under 30s I think, or under 40s, I'm not entirely sure. So yeah, we were going to be flying out to Tbilisi and spending some time there in the areas around there. We were going to be going out into the mountains, and the one thing that I really want to see is the Gageti church. I'll put a picture in because it's just got this most beautiful, amazing backdrop, and I just want to go there so much. And that was on the itinerary, and that was one of the reasons why I chose this particular tour, because it was one of the very few that I could find that actually took you to this particular place that I knew that I wanted to go to. Hopefully this trip will go ahead next year. I've rebooked it for July 2021, so fingers crossed with the good news that we're getting about vaccines, it will be able to go ahead. But the book that I chose for Georgia is an absolute beast. It's nearly 1,000 pages and it's called The Eighth Life for Brilka, and it's written by Nino Haritishvili. So the author of this book is Georgian, but she now lives in Germany. So this book was actually originally written in German and has just now recently been translated into English, but I believe it's like an international bestseller. It did really well in its German form and it was longlisted for the International Booker Prize. So all that I know about this is that it's sort of an intergenerational story about this one Georgian family, but it covers like a lot of history, like the Russian Revolution, the Soviet era in Georgia. It just sounds so epic, and I think it's going to be really useful to help me learn a lot about Georgia and the history of Georgia. It's a country that I've wanted to go to for such a long time now, and a country that I'm really interested in. The blurb also mentions hot chocolate. It says, at the start of the 20th century, on the edge of the Russian Empire, a family prospers thanks to a hot chocolate recipe that bewitches its drinkers. But this chocolate carries a bitter, some say cursed, aftertaste. Tumbling through the years across vast expanses of longing and loss, witness generation after generation of this remarkable family as they struggle and thrive, divide and reunite, and live and die in the red century. So I'm not really sure how hot chocolate is going to come into it, but I love hot chocolate, so you know, that sounds really good. And maybe when I sit down to read this book, I'll make sure that I have a nice mug of hot chocolate next to me. Now obviously this book is absolutely massive, as I said, and the writing is very small. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Is that going to focus? Like, it's small. I am mildly terrified and very overwhelmed by the prospect of reading this, but everything that I've heard about it, because I watched a few videos and I watched an interview with the author who just sounded so great. She was so interesting to listen to, and all the reviews that I've seen of this are just fantastic. Everyone says that they just can't put it down, so I'm hoping that that is going to be my experience with it as well. I think I'm going to start it soon. I'm going to like make myself a time scale for reading this. So these 3 books plus the one from Slovakia that I mentioned are my first 3 books for my Around the World series, and they're all books from the countries that I was meant to travel to this year. I really hope you enjoyed this, and I really hope you like this concept. If you've read any of the books that I've mentioned, then please let me know your thoughts on them. But what I would also really love is if you could recommend me a book from your country. I would love it to be from an author who is from your country and also set in your country, at least for some part. I would love that, because this is a series that I'm definitely going to be working on. And also just let me know where you're looking forward to traveling to when you can, if you are someone who enjoys traveling like I do. Other than that though, that is it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're all keeping safe and staying well, and I will see you again next time. Bye!